How's my hair, Robert?
Got the hoodie lined up, got the hair, just the right amount of gel in it, high and tight on the sides, looking good.
We're recording on the screen. We're recording here. I'll do one of these. Dr. Robert Glover, welcome to the Evolving Man podcast.
Ben, thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here.
Robert, I gotta say, I have to tell you, this is a long time coming for me. You're almost a local celebrity in the circles that I run in the men's work circles. You know, I've got a stack of books here beside my desk of books that I recommend to men.
Mm-hmm.
And your book's at the top here, at the top of the list.
Those are all good books.
I keep a stack of your books in my office, and I give them to guys, when I feel like the right time comes along, And yeah, I want to start by thanking you for your work. I want to thank you for writing this book. My wife's writing a book right now. I know it's a pain to write a book, to get it published, and then to do the book promotion, the book tour. The author's responsible for so much when you do something like this. And the work you have done has rippled out into thousands of lives. I'm sure you've heard this a ton, but I know you live down in Mexico, and all the way up here in Vancouver, there's a hub of guys who are implementing the work that you've shared in this book and helping us become better men. So thank you.
You're welcome, and I love hearing stories like that. And when you mentioned that as writers, you still got to promote it. The book came out 17 years ago in print. And here I'm still doing interviews, and the book's selling better than ever, which I take as good news, which means it's spreading around the world. And I do a lot of interviews like this, many years after the fact, and with coaches that are doing work with men. And when I started my own men's work 25 plus years ago, there was not much out there. There weren't many books to turn to. There's Iron John and a few other mythopoetic type things, but now with just so many men's coaches, so many men's programs, men's groups, men writing books, it's gratifying to see what's going on in the world.
Yeah. So you got into men's work 25 years ago, and you were already a marriage and family therapist, correct?
Right. Yeah, I got my doctorate at age 29 and didn't start doing my own personal recovery till about 35.
Mm-hmm. So, if you don't mind, what does your personal recovery look like at that age?
Well, it as I said, I didn't set out to get into men's work. Men's work really didn't exist. Like I said, you could go find a men's circle and go out in the woods and beat a drum with a talking stick and say, "Oh," but that was about it. It was pretty much just a mythopoetic type thing.
Uh-huh.
And what happened is that my nice guy behavior was about to blow up my second marriage. And my wife said, I can't take your passive aggressiveness anymore. Well, I didn't know what passive aggressiveness was. And said, you need to go get help. So I actually went to get help thinking, how do I get my wife to respond better to me being a nice guy? I was proud of being a nice guy, and she was angry all the time and moody all the time and never wanted to have sex anymore. And so I actually, the progression that I went, I actually joined a 12-step group. I went to a 12-step group for sex addicts and quickly found out I wasn't a sex addict. I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict, and I wasn't sexually impulsive. I had behaved sexually inappropriate, which had caused things to blow up. But it was liberating for me for the first time in my life to have a safe place to just start revealing me. And this group met at 5 or 6 in the morning, and I looked forward to getting up and going because for the first time in my life, I grew up in fundamental Christian church. I'd been a minister for 8 years. I just got used to just hiding everything that, might not play well. Mm-hmm. And so I just started revealing me. Now, I started working with a therapist at that time, and for her session I had with her, she taught me about boundaries. I had a PhD. I was in my second marriage. I'd never heard of boundaries. I didn't even know what they were, how they worked. And that was a big breakthrough, to learn about boundaries.
Yeah.
About a year or so later, a fellow therapist friend of mine told me about a group he was in, led by a woman who'd written a few books on sexual shame, and had a men's group. So I joined that, was in that for probably 3 or 4 years. Did some couples groups with my then wife, some individual. So just it took a path of doing pretty much a therapeutic route.
Yep.
And I didn't set out to write a book. I didn't set out to break free from the nice guy syndrome. I didn't set out to start any kind of men's movement. I just wanted to figure out why me being a nice guy didn't make my wife happier.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started doing my work, as you said, I was already a marriage and family therapist. So guys were coming to counseling and, with their wives or girlfriends or alone, and they were saying the same things I said. I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. I give her everything she wants. It's never enough. She's never happy. She's angry all the time. She never wants to have sex anymore. When's it going to be my turn?
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I can finish their sentences for them. So I realized this whole nice guy persona of trying to be good and to get love and get our needs met, I wasn't the only one. So I started my first No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group 25 plus years ago, and just started writing, just some chapters, basically little blog things that, as before blog articles existed.
Yeah.
And just what I was discovering about me, about nice guy syndrome, how we got to be this way, how to break free of it. And I just kept writing every other week. I'd give them a new chapter, and guys and their wives and girlfriends are saying, you need to write a book. You need to go on Oprah. A lot of people need this. So I just kept writing. About 6 or 7 years later, finished. Took about 3 years to get it published. That was about 17 years ago. And as I said, royalty checks keep getting bigger every year. So it's spreading worldwide.
Yeah, and there's something happening there, and I definitely want to talk about that. I want to talk about the growth and how it's spreading. There's some interesting ties here between you and I and how you got into men's work. I'm 36 now, but I came in through AA as well, essentially. I ended up in rehab when I was 15 years old. And in rehab, we had all these different kinds of circle groups that we would do, or mixed groups with the girls in treatment and groups for the new kids and the older kids. But we would do one called Guys Group. Guys Rap is what it was called. And Guys Rap got really intense, really honest, really serious. And, we talked about our sexual stuff. We talked about our shame. We revealed ourselves way more than we would in the other group.
Oh, of course.
And it had a huge impact on my healing. We talk about our dads, right? If we talked about dads, it was tears for everybody. That was a heavy subject. Here we all were sitting in rehab talking about our dads and how we really didn't measure up to what our dads wanted for us, and we did really care about what he thought of us, no matter how much we said we didn't, and all this stuff, And I got out of treatment and I went into AA, and I did that for years, and I always gravitated towards men's groups because there was a higher level of honesty there, So I thought that was cool that we sort of had the same entrance into men's work, and that was my main method of personal growth for many years through my 20s. And I have a funny story from when I was, I think, 27, 26. I was living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada at the time, and it was my birthday, and all my friends were sober. And I was like, guys, let's just go out to the bar and go dancing. We do that from time to time. We kind of go out in a little sober pod, and we'd go wherever we could find some good music and a decent vibe. And the decent vibe was hard to find, because a lot of times it was just total drunk fest or really unhinged.
And you were in Calgary, Alberta.
Yeah. So we're driving around all these different places, and we go in and we're like, wow, this sucks. We go here. No, that's not our crew. That's not our vibe. And we kind of have a disappointing night. We don't really find a dance floor where we can really get down, and we're having trouble meeting women. I had a lot of trouble meeting women in those settings in my 20s because I was sober. I was not buying anybody any drinks, and just wasn't on the same frequency, And so we're driving down this main artery in Calgary that goes south back towards the suburbs, and that's where everybody comes back from the bar, and we're beside this car full of girls and women, and we roll the windows down and we're like, let's like talk to them. Like, let's
Yeah.
like say, so we roll the window down and we say, hey, like roll your window down. So they roll theirs down. We're like, hey, do you ladies like want to hang out? Like, you want to do something tonight? And they were like, maybe. And we were like, we're really nice guys. Like, we're great guys. We start telling them like what nice guys we were. And this, in hindsight, like, yes, this is a car full of nice guys.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're great guys. And they say, hold on a minute. They roll their windows up and they drive for another couple blocks. And then we stop at a light with them. And we look over and they roll their window down. And we go, so? And they say, girls don't like nice guys. And they turned off and they drove away. And we were like, oh no, it's the worst birthday ever. And we laughed and semi cried about it. And man, looking back, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get it, But at the time I was like, what is this paradox?
Yeah.
What
That
is
was
this?
that was my whole, if you could say I had a dating strategy in high school and college, it was be the nice guy, be different than the jerks that I'd heard women complain about, that I heard my mother complain about. And like, oh yeah, I'll be nice. That'll how I'll stand out. That'll be my card in, and maybe end up in the friend zone at best. But no, nice is not arousing to women. Nice just says, oh, he'll buy me drinks. Nice is he'll pay my car payment. Nice is he'll help my sister move. That's all nice is to women.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's maybe flesh this bit out for people who haven't heard about it before. But basically, you talked about the jerk as well. And this is sort of how I see it and we can get into the development of it as well and just touch on that bit. But as men grow up and differentiate from their mother and come into manhood, there's this sort of pushing away of the mother that's natural. And you do that with your father as well, just in a little bit of a different way. And your mother being the one who, was responsible for giving you all the love you wanted, inevitably didn't do that perfectly. And there's often some wounds and some resentment there. And it's kind of a part of the pushing away process. And the mother represents the great mother in a sense. She's the connection to like the greater, the feminine, right? All women in a sense. Like in the beginning, your mother is like a god, and in a sense, she's not even separate from you. And then slowly you see that she's separate from you, but you still see her as godlike. And she hurts you and doesn't give you all your needs, right? You don't get all your needs met from her. And so inevitably we all have some discontent and some wounding with the mother as we detach from her. And men tend to then project an image onto all women, or most women. They have these preconceived notions of women that align a little bit with their discontent with their mother. And that usually results in either a macho jerk, as David Data would say, or a caring wimp, as David Data would say. And the caring wimp is essentially the nice guy that you wrote a whole book about. Would you say that's a fairly accurate breakdown?
Yeah, it is that, well, and it's not all necessarily just tied to mom, but yeah, I think both. And when people pick up my book, the title is a little bit, it's not provocative in itself, but it does make you question, why would somebody write a book teaching men to be not nice? And, most of us are pretty black and white. Well, if you're not a nice guy, you're a jerk. Uh-huh. But as I explain in the book and continue to develop since then, is that I think that the jerk and the nice guy are both operating at the same level. They're both in anxiety management. And they're in fight, flight, freeze mechanism most of the time. The jerk uses the fight. He's going to dominate people to get what he wants and manage his anxiety. The nice guy's going to use the flight freeze to try to manage people in situations and get what he wants. But they're both actually operating from the same stimulus area. So I tell people, just going from one extreme to the other isn't going to solve anything. And often nice guys will say, okay, I get that being a nice guy, being this wussy doormat doesn't work. How can I, find that happy middle ground? And I go, there isn't a happy middle ground. I tell them, I don't know where the tipping point is between two dysfunctional extremes, because both are just about managing anxiety and shame. So really, when I talk about breaking free from nice guy syndrome, it's not becoming a little bit more asshole, is moving up and Data even uses, we have different ways of looking at it, but he talks about first stage, second stage, third stage men. And I just break it down. That first stage is asshole, jerk, wussy, doormat. I call the second level is a differentiated man. It's the man who can ask himself, what do I want? What's important to me? It's a man who can self-soothe. It's a man who works at releasing his shame. It's a man that can give generously with no strings attached, no covert contracts. And so, but going back to the mother part, it is a powerful piece of it. When I was doing marriage and family counseling, I would often talk with mothers. When their child starts differentiating, especially their sons, at around 2 to 3 years old, and they walk, they're more mobile, they're wandering away, they're saying no, they're saying I want, all that what we call terrible twos, which is a terrible name for healthy differentiation. And I would tell moms, once your son starts wandering away, all he really needs, what he most needs from you is to be a lap, meaning that he can wander away and not feel tied to you, or that he's got to be there, that you're not hanging on to him because you need him to be there for you. And that he knows if he wanders away and comes back, you're still there. Mm-hmm. You haven't just left and you're never going to be there again. So it just means being a lap. He can crawl up in your lap. He can, tell you about his day. He can show you his skin knee, and then he can get down and go venture out again. And so, but that is challenging for many women. They either want to hang on too tightly, be the helicopter mom, don't let their son get hurt, wander away, or they're just completely unavailable to their son. And so what happens is we grow up and we bring that experience with mom into our relationships with women. We either expect that they're going to hold on to us. If we get close to them, they're going to smother us, they're going to control us, we're going to lose our freedom. So a lot of guys kind of get in relationship with both hands out, kind of like, don't consume me, don't smother me. And then the other side of it is, if mom wasn't there, and when we went back looking for a lap and couldn't find her, we then grow up and expect women are going to abandon us, that they'll cheat on us, they'll leave us, they won't be there. And we tend to pick women that help us co-create that familiar dynamic. We do have that tendency to go out and co-create what feels familiar from our earliest love relationships, because that's the toolbox we've got from when we were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. And since that's the relationship toolbox we've got, we carry that into our adult relationships and find women, partners, to help us co-create what feels familiar. Even if what feels familiar is toxic, dysfunctional, and painful, that's what we tend to do.
That's what we like to do as humans. Yes,
that's what human brains like to do.
Yeah, and so men do it, women do it, and somehow when you sit down with a couple that's having a dysfunctional breakdown, whether it's communication or action based, you see that her wounding in many ways fits his wounding perfectly in an opposite fashion.
Hand in glove. It almost always, again, I was a marriage therapist for 30 years, and you quickly see, working with couples, when you look at them systemically, that both of them have co-created something that works. Even if it's toxic as hell, it works because it feels familiar. I think it might have been Pia Melody, I'm trying to remember, said we tend to marry someone, get involved with somebody who has some of the worst traits of both of our parents. And both people in relationship are doing that.
Right.
And then we wonder, why is this such a struggle? Well, because we're doing our work through our partner. Our partners give us that doorway into doing our work from childhood.
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. And so that's a critical bit, right? Because that can be, you can get disillusioned when someone tells you that reality, that like, hey, unconsciously, like we're all kind of programmed to end up with someone that's going to make relationship difficult.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, then aren't we doomed? Yeah.
So then we go online and find MGTOW, and I won't have anything to do with women because they're the source of my problem. No, that's not the problem. And if we can shift this, and this can be challenging, but I find that most people can do this. Let's shift that into a gift. It's an opportunity that here we've invited someone into our life, and they've invited us into their life without knowing it, to help us work on the stuff we've been packing around in that relationship toolbox that, maybe it worked when we were 3, but it ain't going to work when we're 30, 40, or 50. And that's a gift. And I've been talking to individuals since I started doing work with men around dating, and like I said, I've been doing relationship work for a long time, is to treat dating, relationship, every interaction with the opposite sex as a powerful personal growth machine. It's going to trigger us like nothing else. It's going, and that open doors of opportunity if we can be open to watching the triggers and go, wow, why am I reacting so intensely here? Wow, why am I thinking about leaving all the time? Wow, why am I trying to change her all the time? Well, if we can just have that curiosity about why, what is happening here, and know that probably everything that's going on that is just uncomfortable is probably old. It's probably something old that we are projecting, our partner is projecting onto us, and we're projecting onto them. That's a gift. That's a great window of opportunity.
Yeah, it's a great window. And if we don't take that opportunity, we will create the same patterns over and over again. I had a mother who was controlling. She was holding on really tightly,
Oh, I doubt you ever get controlling women in your life, do you? No, well, they're strong women. They're strong women.
Yes,
that's what they are.
I'm a very strong woman, but it's true. Like, I experienced virtually all women as trying to control me.
Yeah,
for my whole life after that, and that projection, that me putting a story on them and our relationship caused a lot of problems. Me not voicing that and saying like, hey, I'm feeling controlled here. Something that's important to me is freedom. I also have a wound where, I was controlled as a child, and I want to check that with you and air that with you and have a conversation with you about it. That never happened. It was always like, get away from me.
Let's work on it. Yeah. You constantly had your running shoes laced up and the walls up. And again, if we can be the watcher, if we can even just step back just a little bit and observe and it takes probably a few years to do this, to notice what are our repeated tendencies over and over and over again. If you pick the same kind of woman each time you start dating and get involved or get married, or if you keep running into the same stuff, if we have enough wisdom, and again, often it takes getting into 12 steps or, therapy or something to say, what's the common denominator here? Why do I keep inviting the same dynamic into my life and ending up in the same place? I'm on my third marriage, and I'm still working on the same issues I was working on in my first marriage. And now, instead of running from it, I just treat it as opportunity. That, you mentioned your mom. My father could be critical and demeaning and moody. And, guess what I tend to pick? I tend to pick women that seem to me to be critical, and they're up 1 minute, they love me 1 minute, the next minute they think I'm a terrible human being. Now, that's not actually the case. But it feels that way to my nervous system because that is what has been deeply wired into it. And so now, instead of blaming them for being how they are, or even blaming me, why did I invite this into my life again? Say, oh, I still got work to do. I still got opportunities to keep cleaning out that really old emotional baggage, and I've picked the most ideal person to help me do that. And so now I can stay open-hearted and loving and realize that I also am the ideal person to help my wife, work through her really old stuff as well. And that becomes a beautiful dance if there's love there and a willingness to, look inward at ourselves and be grateful for what our partner brings. And even when they trigger us into thinking, what the fuck? Why do they do that? Take a breath. Why am I reacting? Well, it's my stuff.
That's the ticket to a successful long-term relationship, is switching from the mindset of blaming the other person for being the way that they are, and that's why you can't be with them, to looking at the opportunity that lies in the challenging atmosphere that comes from being two different people with two different needs, and all of the stories that we can make up about why a person did what they did. Right. Yeah.
And realize, okay, we picked each other because the other person was the exact perfect person to help us do the work we need to do.
So, I got into this stuff. I did AA for 15 years, and then I took a break from AA because that was a long time to do AA for. And I was doing sort of my own stuff. I was doing yoga and other ceremonial stuff and sweat lodges and things that were really good for my soul. And then, and I, had relationships along the way. And then I met a very powerful woman.
Yeah. Strong woman.
She's a strong woman. She doesn't even need to be in quotes. She is a strong woman. And coincidentally, right around that time, the guys that I was around started tapping into this men's community, Samurai Brotherhood, here in Vancouver. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I'll go to the open house here, because this relationship is intense. It's fun, but I also, when we had our fights and our tussles, those were pretty intense too. But I saw the potential in the relationship, and I was like, oh man, I really want to make this thing work, but I think I need help. And so I went to this open house and I joined. And as I got to know the guys, we had about 15, 16, 17 guys in the circle. Within 2 weeks, we're talking about your book, and we're going around the room and we're identifying guys in the room who are dealing with nice guy behaviors. And, most of the hands are going up. Mm-hmm. And so we're all, passing around your book and a few other books. Way of Superior Man was definitely up there. And yeah, I mean, everybody's relationships changed. We all started figuring out how to say, what we really wanted, to speak our truth to a woman. And, for me, the biggest thing was when stuff was happening with Shalina, when we were fighting, or when I was feeling particularly controlled by her, I was able to, slow down and, like you're saying, step back and see I'm projecting mother onto her right now. And sometimes I projected brother onto her, because my brother, I had an older brother who was fairly dominant in my life, and Shalina has a very strong personality. And so I would often project my brother's character onto her. You're bullying me, you're controlling me, and being able to voice that with her, that got me through situations that I know would have ended the relationship in the past, where I know I would have ran out the door and or fought for my life and turned her into an enemy, right? Like, if that's what's happening, your relationship's not going to work.
And you hit on something that I think is crucial. When I was doing couples counseling, I would tell couples in the very first session they came to see me, I would tell them the very best thing each of them could do for their marriage was to have good same-sex friends. Because one thing I notice, especially with nice guys, is that we get into a relationship and we give up everything. We okay, I want to make her happy. I want to be with her. I want to blah, 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 blah. And we start giving up our guy friends. If we had them, we give them up. And it is so crucial. I mentioned, I'm in my 60s. I'm in my third marriage. We're going to have our 4th year anniversary in just a couple weeks, actually. And about a year into the marriage, I'm living down in Mexico. My wife's Mexican. She and her kids don't speak English, so I'm having to learn Spanish. I'm parenting again. My stepkids are the age of my granddaughter. I'm in a different culture where I'm not fluent in the language. I don't necessarily fit in with the locals. I'm not living near tourists anymore. And it's like, man, I feel isolated. And in one of my workshops that I was leading, I put out that, I need to find a men's group. I need a coach. I need to connect with men. And I said, I need help with the struggles I'm having in my marriage, because I want us to get through these struggles. And one of the guys attending one of my workshops, and you mentioned this before we started recording, said, I'm in this program with this guy that studied with David Data for 10 years, and we have 2 or 3 workshops a year and all. And I said, sign me up. I need it. So I'm in my 3rd year in this men's program. I've been doing my own men's work for 25 to 30 years. I had a PhD at 29 in marriage and family therapy. And I just got back this week from a retreat in Northern California with 30 guys. Wow. And it just fed my soul. It cracked me open. My heart, is just wide open, feeling the beauty of everything and the pain of everything. And I did that work with men, with 30 men. And, since then we've been in touch, we've been talking, we've been engaged. And like I said, this is my 3rd year in the program. And, when I started the program, I had one guy I considered a good friend that I could count on. Now I've got at least 5 or 6 men I consider best friends, probably 30 men if I contact them, they're there for me in a heartbeat. And they love me and they express their love for me. And so, when things aren't going great with my wife or I feel like she's not loving me enough, I just remember I got this tribe of men that just love the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And so I've been saying to men for a long time, a healthy relationship is built on a foundation of good masculine relationships. If you spend time with men doing what men do, whatever that is, whether that's playing poker, having Bible study, climbing rocks, having retreats, whatever it is spending time where you get to absorb that masculine energy. Your soul is filled with it. It's supportive, it's challenging, it's accountable, and we men we need that tribe. And as you and I were talking before we started recording, just worldwide, I see men building tribe. Whether it's seeking out pickup, whether it's seeking 12-step programs, whether it's men's divorce groups, whether it's men embodiment groups, whether it's samurai groups, men are out looking for tribe. And the beautiful thing is they're finding it now. There's opportunity for men to connect deeply with men, not just superficially, but as you talked about, like in those first meetings you went to in recovery and 12-step, you get guys together. And it can get real in a hurry. When women say, "Oh, men just aren't connected to their emotions. Men just don't feel. Men just aren't expressive." I go, bullshit. Take women out of the picture. We're as expressive as hell, and we're loving, and we're affectionate, and we hug, and we say, "I love you." And I mean, I kiss my buddies on the cheek. I mean, I send them text messages with hearts in them. There's just a purity about masculine love that I believe builds a foundation to be able to do that challenging work with a member of the opposite sex. So I'm thrilled that you and your associates are doing the work you're doing, building Tribe for Men. And I think that's the foundation of us having good relationships with women.
Yeah, I definitely see a growth happening. I see, first of all, it's amazing that a guy who has as many qualifications as you have is still engaging the work and still going and doing retreats in person and has his own men's group. Because in a sense, you're walking your talk and it's inspirational. And especially to see a guy your age doing that. I mean, my dad is 76, significantly older than you, but maybe even sidebar. I wanted to ask you how many men you see in their 60s and 70s getting into this work, recovering from the nice guy syndrome. My dad hasn't read this book, and to be honest, he should. I come from a long line of nice guys. My dad's dad was a nice guy.
Maybe that's on you. He hasn't read it. Maybe because you haven't said, "Dad, you got to read this."
I'm going to give it to him like this month. I'm going to give it to him before Christmas.
So to answer your question, I see men of all ages getting into this. As I said, in my age bracket, I'm kind of tail end of what in the U.S. at least is called the baby boom generation. It's when men came back from war and started having a lot of babies and moved up into middle class and lived in the suburbs and got educated, and their kids got educated. So I'm kind of the tail end of that growth phenomena, and there's a lot of nice guys in that group. A lot of us are trying to be different from our fathers, and that was a pretty big nice guy dynamic for a lot of men. So when I started working with nice guys, I was working with men my age. Like I said, I was back in my 30s at that time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of men, and so I've seen men my age looking for this, and like I just had a Q&A call for a class I'm teaching just before our interview, and there's one guy on there that was one of the first time I'd ever seen him, and I guess he's probably mid-50s, and just beginning to kind of understand this. And so many men in that age bracket said, "I wish I'd found this 20 years ago, 30 years ago." Well, it didn't exist 30 years ago, and so now pretty much what I see is probably the bulk of men moving into men's work are often is younger men that are highly influenced by the internet. And they're out there looking for issues. They're looking for answers. They're Googling, how to meet women. They're Googling what to do with strong. I've got 200 podcasts I've recorded, mostly about relationship and dating. The number one most popular podcast, and they cover all subjects from premature ejaculation to Learning to be the non-judgmental observer of self. The number one most popular podcast is How to Deal with Strong, Controlling Women. Right. So, guys Google that stuff. Right. And they start finding that there's resources out there that guys like you and Connor and John Wineland and, hundreds of men that I've never even heard of or met are out there creating, these platforms for men to get coaching, to get into groups, to get tribe. And so what I tend to see is that probably the bulk of men I see moving into it these days is men early 20s to mid 30s to 40s because they're very savvy. They grew up with the internet, so they go to the internet looking for answers. Yeah. And so I think that's maybe when I did my book tour 2003, a lot of reporters said, well, do you see a worldwide men's movement coming like feminism, women's movement? I said, no, not really, because I said I don't think there's one unifying factor to unify and bring men together. And I don't know that women would band together and support that like men did for feminism. I think feminism succeeded because of male support of doing the right thing. So I said, I don't see that happening, but I was right a little bit, but wrong mostly. That I do think there's a worldwide men's movement. Like I said, it doesn't matter to me if they're, get into pickup or if they get into 12-step or get into Mankind Project or, just Google, how to deal with strong, controlling women. There's resources out there and men are finding them, and what they're finding more than just the answers to this particular issue that kind of whether it's drinking or how to meet women or how do you deal with premature ejaculation. They went looking for answers to specific questions, and in the process found tribe, found men getting together, being real with each other and supporting each other. Again, it might even be martial arts. It doesn't matter. We're finding men, and that's a fundamental core masculine need for tribe and initiation. And the beautiful thing is that's a growing field, right? Yep. There's more and more men out there offering that, building that, and it's easier to find. And again, I'm just as happy as I can be to see that happening because it wasn't there. 30 years ago. And now, you can't, well, they say you can't throw a dead cat without finding a men's coach or a men's program somewhere. And that's good. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, this is really good to hear that perspective from someone who's been around longer than I have and has sort of had his eyes open and watching the landscape and that you've seen this thing grow. And yeah, I think men get into groups together and they find out that they're stronger together. Right? Like naturally that tribe aspect, we lock into some extra level of power when we do things together, and we can do things, badly. We can join gangs, we can join the military or we can do pickup, right? All this stuff that has sort of quite a bit of collateral damage, let's say, but we do still find a level of power in that. And what I've seen is that inevitably a lot of guys, they evolve and they step into something new. Like I know a number of guys who were into pickup and who were pretty high up in that industry and doing quite well running businesses in that industry, and they're out and they're in Samurai Brotherhood or they're in John Wineland's groups or your groups. Like they get into their next level of evolution, which is more of an inward journey than it is about playing the outside, playing other people.
And I've got to watch that, as you say, because I'm not a big fan of pickup. I mean, there's some pluses to it if it gets you out of your comfort zone. I think it tends to be demeaning to both men and women and pretty superficial, and a lot of attachment to outcome. And as you say, I've seen over the last 25 years, I've seen most of the original pickup people either commit suicide or evolve out of that and evolve into a more, even, you can go from the game to the truth. And, one is about how to go pick up women. And the other is, hey, I found my truth in relationship and having depth of relationship, not through using women as sex objects. So the beautiful thing is there is that evolution that for example, I'd never even heard of embodiment work, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when I got into John Wineland's program, and it's called Embodied Men's Leadership Training. About first month when we started, getting online and talking to each other, I just had to ask, What's embodiment? I didn't even know what that meant. And it probably took me a couple of years to even kind of get a clear enough idea in my own mind of how to even define what embodiment work is. And it means a lot of things to a lot of people. So, but my point is that we have a problem, whether it's how do I talk to women, how do I quit masturbating, how do I learn to, how do I get through my divorce? We have a problem. We go looking for answers. And if the process we find tribe, and the tribe, you know, even if it's not the perfect tribe, is part of our journey and evolution. And then maybe we either that tribe evolves or we find other more evolved tribes. And I just have great faith in men. I love working with men. Kind of like you alluded to earlier, when we men get to just be with men and take women out of the picture, we go deep. We get real with each other. And that's why for several years now, all of my workshops are men only. And not that I got any issue about women coming and doing the work, but I found if women are in the room, men clam up, and it is what it is. So yeah, I love doing this work with men, and people say, "Are you going to retire anytime soon?" I said, "Why would I do that? I love doing what I do. I get up every day and just love that I get to work with men."
Thank you for not retiring. Yeah, it's like such important work, and it's a gift, I think, to have found something you love so deeply that you don't need to retire from. It is a North Star for a lot of guys. I do want to back you up and just take a moment to reinforce that point that you made about there's a particular energy that men get from one another when they're in a men's only space, men's only container. And I think women can be not hostile, but defensive about that, critical of like, well, what the hell? Because it seems like if you put a group of women together and you bring one man in there, they don't really change much. It's like they don't even see him, but men are different that way. We
Weird.
are affected. We are affected, and for better or for worse. Sorry, ladies, but that changes our container. And so there is something special about that sacred, confidential container. And we want women to certainly have that for themselves. But, if I could make a point of saying, like, to the women who are listening and to the women who want men to be better, advocate for men to have men's only spaces in the world that are, contributing to their evolution and personal growth, because you don't see it. You don't see how men connect to each other unless you have the privilege of, someone like my wife who's lives here. We've got 2 men's leaders downstairs and 2 men's leaders upstairs here, and she sees how we love each other and interact with each other all day, and we're being together, and she's sort of swimming in the masculine energy here, and she's holding her own.
She's not going to complain about that.
But she sees it and she's like, wow, like I want Ben to go away to these retreats. I want men to go spend time alone with these guys, because he comes home a little bit better, a little bit sharper, a little more embodied every time. And so, she runs Rising Woman, and, Rising Woman is very, it's mostly women following that. And so I have a ton of women followers on my Instagram. And when I post stuff about, men being together and men doing the work or Samurai Brotherhood stuff, it's like all comments from women going, yes, oh my God, men do this? This is amazing. Like, women are like, holy moly, where is this happening? Because it's such a surprise to them, because we hide it. We kind of hide this stuff.
And it's such a good point. And I'm going to make 2 points here. And one of them, is I'll go out on a limb a little bit. I think sometimes women are a little bit uncomfortable with men just getting off with men, because all right, what are they doing? What are they talking about? Because in general, when women get together, it involves complaint. What are they unhappy about? And so they complain and they talk about their unhappiness. So they assume when we men get together, we're complaining about them, and we're pooling in our unhappiness about them. Now, in my experience, men will get together. Like when I was doing men's groups, a guy would show up, start a men's group, and first week he's complaining about his wife, this, that, and the other thing. And that you can tell that's the reason why he joined. He's unhappy. And I would tell men up front, you get 2 sessions to complain. Following after the second session, no, we're working on you. No more complaining. There's no room for that here. And I love that every men's program I've been in turns any complaint into how do we go deep into ourselves. And so I think that's one thing I'll just say, for women out there that have the concern about it. In most, there's exceptions. Maybe you get over into red pill or men going their own way. Maybe the main thing is complaining about women. But most men don't like being there. It's painful. We really do want to love women. We want to find answers to how can I have love of a good partner in my life. So there's one piece is that in general, men quickly get past the complaint and men start confronting and saying, so what you going to do, brother? You going to sit here and complain?
Yeah. What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it,
brother?
Yeah.
And we're going to hold you accountable. So that's a really beautiful piece about that. The other piece of it is that men have so little in our lives that truly do nourish our souls and nourish the masculine part of ourselves. And I started realizing this in my second marriage. And my second wife, the core problem, well, there's several problems in that marriage, but one of them is that she just completely withdrew sexually, like on her honeymoon. On her honeymoon, she said, aren't you glad now that we're married, we don't have to pretend to like sex anymore? I wasn't pretending. And so with her trauma, that pretty much meant a pretty sexless marriage for about 14 years. And I was a nice guy I began my recovery in that relationship. So I was always trying to please her and make her happy. So one of the things I did. I gave up all my guy friends. I quit going to the gym. I quit just doing anything for me. And I realized I had to start doing those things again. And that was kind of a slow process. But one of the things I started doing is taking road trips with some buddies to go watch baseball games around the country. We'd go to different ballparks and just have a guy's weekend. And it was so enriching to me. And it took a little bit of adjustment for my wife to get comfortable with it. But I remember after about the third or fourth, we do one of these a year, I got back, and apparently I got back earlier than she thought I was coming home. She said, well, I didn't expect you back so soon. And I said, well, some of the guys went on to Vegas. We were in San Francisco. And I said, but I had some work to do, so I came on back. And she said, well, I just want to tell you, she says, I am so attracted to you when you go away, spend time with men, and come back. And coming from a woman who had a lot of trauma around sex and a lot of barriers, that was pretty powerful to say, I'm so attracted to you. And my present wife sees the same. I mean, I can't even explain to her really what it is I do or what we do in my men's program with John Wineland. I give her some examples of some practices, but we got the language difference. And, here in Mexico, just personal development isn't, the thing. And so instead of trying to explain to her what I do, is I try to find ways to make sure she gets to meet the men I'm spending time with in my men's program. So either through men coming down here to my house in Mexico. One time I went up, did a couple session with John Wineland completely in Spanish, which was really cool. So she's met the man who's coaching me and she likes him. Every man I brought to our home, whether as a small group or individually, they were coming through one, I bring them around her and she sees these are good men and she sees the impact on me. Like I said, I just got back from a workshop and, I come back and I'm just penetrating her, with my love and my consciousness and presence. And I just watch her just falling all in love with me like she's a teenager, all over again. And so I know she feels it. So even if she has kind of her own, how come he leaves for a week or two and what are they doing and, blah, 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 she sees the impact of it. And so I've seen that over and over and over again. Women feel the difference when their man has gone and done deep work with other men. It just fills our soul and it opens our hearts and it gives us strength and it grounds us and it just makes us powerful. Yeah. And women just, they feel it and it feels good to them.
Mm-hmm. And I think many of us need this push. We need a sufficient amount of fire to get us into the work, right? And so for you, it was the critical amount of discomfort in your first marriage.
It was my second wife saying, "If you don't go get help, I'm leaving you." That was a pretty big push.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, I got into a relationship with someone where I was like, "Whoa, like I'm here and she's here. Like I need to level up, you know. And
Yeah.
and we went and did an open house the other day for to expand the men's community, and I shared that story, and there was, 12, 13 guys in the room, and 5 other men in the group after that said, "I'm in the same position you were. I've got a partner who is way more emotionally intelligent than I am, way more tapped in than I am. In many ways, I see her as more sort of evolved than I am. I'm great
Yeah.
at doing my business. I'm great at building things. I have these these other sort of qualities that I've developed, but I need to level up in relationship. I don't have men that are close to me that I can lean on, and I need to do my work." And so I think that is fairly common is we have something that sort of pushes us into the work, whether it's a relationship or whether it's having a kid. I know a lot of guys
yeah.
who they had a kid and they're like, "Oh man, I got to step it up." And some guys try to just do that on their own. And you can do that, but there's an extra level of power, I think. Same thing, it's the squad. It's the power of the tribe. When if you can have a tribe all throughout your life from birth to death, you're going to be
What a gift.
what a
What a
gift.
gift. And something that neither one of us was specifically said about tribe is that we find out we're not alone. I think, oftentimes, if you're struggling with pornography, you think you're alone. If you're struggling with masturbation, you think you're alone. If you're struggling with drugs or alcohol, you think you're the only one struggling. If you're struggling in your relationship or, with premature ejaculation or whatever, to go get into tribe and find out, oh, I'm not terminally unique. I mean, here's, a great number of other men around me have had or have the same struggles. Something about that, I think, especially for men, is liberating. We can come out of our shell. We don't have to, enclose ourselves in that little shame compartment of, oh, I'm fundamentally flawed. Being around flawed men and finding out, hey, I don't judge that guy for that issue. Maybe he doesn't judge me, and maybe I need to stop judging myself and just learn to talk about it. And as you know, talking about anything is the first and most powerful step to moving through it and moving beyond it. And so finding out we're not terminally unique. I'm not the only person that compulsively looks at porn. And then you find out, oh, you mean 80% of all men have issues with porn? I'm not the only pervert out there. And that's liberating
Yeah.
to find out you're not the only flawed human being. You're not the only flawed male.
It's like taking off a backpack full of boulders that you've been carrying for years.
Great way to put it.
Right.
Great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So so we're both stoked on men's groups and carrying that message to the world of like it's time to bring men together. People ask me what I'm doing with Evolving Man, and I stand for a number of things: conscious relationship, men's evolution. But I, if I could pick a mission, it would be to make men's work as popular as yoga. Like 40 years ago.
Why are you so self-limiting, man? Why are you limiting yourself to that?
Well, I mean, I'm in Vancouver, so yoga's everywhere. It's like everybody's doing yoga. At least that's how it seems. But 40 years ago, only the kooky weirdos were doing yoga. At least that's what it seems like, right?
Yeah.
And now there's, it's everywhere, and I want to popularize men sitting together in intentional groups, not just rugby, the pub, watching sports together, competing against each other in some capacity, and just intentional, support, masterminding,
Yeah.
and growth.
I like that term, intentional. Mm-hmm. Yeah, intentional. We're here for a reason. We're here to sharpen each other. We're here to hold each other. One of my calls in my men's program several months ago, David Data came on because my coach has worked with him for several years, and we mainly talked about men's group in that call, and David said something that I've done workshops with him before, but I'd never heard this thing he said, and it was so, with all the work I've done with men, it was so powerful. And he said men tend to come to a group for one of three reasons. Either they come initially, or they come to any individual meeting of the group with one of three things. One is that they're in pain and they want to be held. Something's going on that hurts or struggling, and they just need a band of brothers to be there. Or they need to be challenged. They need to be sharpened and held accountable. So they got this they want to be their best self. They want to meet their purpose. And he said a third reason, and I really manifested at my age at least, related to this one. He says they come to just be. They come to just be with men. And I thought, I'm like, yeah. That's why I joined a men's program. I'm at the age I don't necessarily need a lot more men pushing me to challenge myself. I mean, I'm learning a language in my 60s. I'm raising kids again. Yeah. I'm writing more books. I'm leading men's programs. I'm in my own. I got plenty of challenge, and I love but I have accountability systems to hold me to that. Sometimes I'm hurting, and I just need to be held. But mostly, I just need to be. I need to be with men. I need to have the humor that men have. I need to have the nurturing that men have. I need to have the love that I think men can uniquely give. And so that made me more conscious in my own work that I do with men, to be more conscious of why are men here? Are they hurting and need to be held by the tribe? Uh-huh. Are they falling down and getting habitual in certain behaviors, and they need to be sharpened and challenged by their tribe and held accountable, right? Yep. Or do they just need to be, just to bask in that masculine energy and that masculine love? And all of those are legitimate reasons. And so I found that to be a really good tool in working with men and helping to meet men's needs better as to why they're there. And even it's pretty easy to identify. Hey, beginning of a group, are you hurting? Do you need to be held? You need to be challenged? Are you just needing to bask in in the love and presence of men? Yeah. And all three are very good reasons.
That's beautiful. I'm going to remember that and use that in distinguishing between what a particular guy needs at different times. And you're right. It is, in many ways, it's just about being together, and we're basically looking at the millennial generation blowing up men's work right now, right? That's really what's expanding it, and that's what we've seen in Samurai Brotherhood. And guys are really developing quite a bit of emotional intelligence, emotional IQ through all of what's available out there right now. I posted a message, an Instagram story saying, like, guys, what questions do you have for Robert Glover? And one of the questions I got was, what is the link between the nice guy syndrome, the abandonment wound, and the inner child? Which is a beautiful question to receive.
All of the above.
Yeah. They're all connected.
Yeah, they are connected because, nice guy syndrome comes out of internalizing at a very young age at an emotional level. I'm not okay just as I am. There's abandonment there. There's wound that children always internalize. It's their fault. Now, they don't think that because it's pre-verbal, but we emotionally... young children are grandiose and narcissistic by nature. We believe the universe revolves around us and we're the cause of everything. So if mom or dad are angry or don't pick us up when we're cold or hungry, or or they enmesh with us and then leave us, and we all believe that's on us, and so we think we got to become something to make sure that doesn't happen, and or hide certain things about us to make sure we don't get negative reactions. And that's nice guy syndrome right there. Yeah. What do I have to become to get my needs met and get loved? What do I need to hide about me to not get abandoned and not get shamed?
It starts as nice boy syndrome, turns into nice guy syndrome, right?
Yeah, mostly does.
So another guy asked, what are your top 3 favorite books for men and men's work?
Well, I think you might have held them all up. I honestly do have to put my book on that list. I just reread it a couple months ago because we were updating the ebook. I had to reread the Mobi files for any transition errors. Reading it, I thought, I'm proud of this. I like it. And I even thought, this isn't just for nice guys anymore. This is probably for most men coming of age nowadays. And I think that's what most men's coaches are, whether the guy identifies as a nice guy or not, I think there's a lot of good stuff there. I didn't read Way of the Superior Man until after my book had been published. Several of my clients kept referencing David Data and Way of the Superior Man, and I thought, that's kind of got a weird title. And then after a while, I thought, well, my book has kind of a weird title too. So I picked it up and read it. And I was actually, I'd been divorced from my second wife for a while and was out in the dating world. And I was dating a woman that I'd been with for a little while. And I remember starting to read that and telling her, we went out to lunch and I said, this is my new Bible. And I said, this is a tremendous bookend to No More Mr. Nice Guy. And they're very different, as you know. Way of the Superior Man and No More Mr. Nice Guy are written differently, have a different approach, different philosophical, but they really do bookend each other very well.
Yes.
Now, other favorite books that I recommended a lot when I was working, not just with men, but in no particular order, The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck, I think is an excellent book. Passionate Marriage by David Snarch, I think is an excellent book. Unfortunately, he passed away about 2-3 weeks ago of a heart attack. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. I read that going through my first divorce. It was really a very powerful book for me. Other books that I've kind of added to that list, well, Iron John. I mean, everybody needs to read Iron John just to know Iron John. Even if it's not your cup of tea, I think that's required reading. Big Leap by Gail Hendricks is a good book for men. I just finished one. So when I was doing my road trip last week, I asked my brothers, hey, recommend some audiobooks. And I got several, and most of which I'd read already. But one was Losing the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza.
Breaking Habit.
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yep.
Good book. I would recommend that. He really, I don't know that I buy everything he said, maybe about the quantum physics part of molecules rearranging themselves, but everything else in terms of how we create, how our mind thinks and what we create in the world, I think is really good stuff. So I'd put that on the list. A book that's really an old book that I started reading a few months ago, and I've been a little bit in and out of it. I don't recall if I saw it on your list, but Magician Lover, was that in your list as well?
Right under yours.
Right under mine.
Yeah.
And it's a Jungian approach, and it's got some really good depth to it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's probably why I read a little bit. 'Cause I tend to read about 4 or 5 books at a time. So yeah, that's a pretty good stack of books. I noticed he had Warren Farrell's book in there as well. His book, The Myth of Male Power, was probably the first kind of masculine empowerment book I ever read. I remember reading that thing and telling my then second wife, I go, how the fuck did he get this book published?
Yeah.
Because that was during a time when, everything about women was good and everything about men was bad. And I'm thinking, how did he ever get a book published that basically says, no, men aren't all bad and women aren't all good. And I mean, I'm kind of giving a black and white view of it. But so he's been doing tons of, for years, Warren Farrell's been, a big influence in men's work.
Yeah. I mean, Warren Farrell ran he's old enough to have had a run-in with John Lennon. He has this story of how John Lennon approached him and talked about how men's group changed his life, right? And I've
not heard that story. How cool.
This story is so good. YouTube it. Just have a search for the John Lennon story with Warren Farrell, and he's oblivious to who he's talking to at this party while John Lennon is telling him like, hey, like I quit the band because my men's group was like, hey, like you want to raise your second son and you can't do that while you're in this band. It's taking up too much time.
You mean Yoko Ono didn't break the Beatles? It was really his men's group that broke the Beatles?
That's what he says. That's what he said.
All right. There you go.
It's amazing. It's an amazing story. But yeah, I mean, Warren Farrell has this way of he sided with feminism. He started men's groups to support feminism. And so he was in on that whole movement. And then he discovered like, hey, men need men's groups for men as well. Yeah. And so I think maybe he was able to get that published because he's so artistically impartial, or like a bit of a scientist, and doesn't have as controversial a way of speaking and writing as I would. I would make many more enemies than he does. But for sure, Warren Farrell's work has surely shaped your life and my life through the work he's done. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing those books. And yeah, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. I certainly recommend for guys that want to dig into the shadow of the psyche and the different archetypes that are sort of around us and behind us all the time, and the power of myth. It might be a good one to read right after Iron John. I'm doing a deep dive with my men's group with King Warrior Magician Level. I just bought them all the books, and we're spending the whole winter studying the archetypes in our lives. So
I'll tell you what, I will commit to dive back into it myself, and vicariously I'll do some work with you guys.
Awesome, thank you. A couple other questions, from people. One person says, "What is the most important quality that men lack in modern society?" So if I could reframe that, I would say, what do we need most right now? It's 2020. There's a lot of craziness in the world. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of sort of camping, like here's the good guys, here's the bad guys. And like we can righteously attack the bad guys. And my nervous system gets activated every day.
Oh yeah. That stuff's all still tribal, by the way. Our tribe is right. We're going to kill your tribe. So there's good parts about tribe, and there's parts of our human existence that are not so good. The first two things that came to mind as you're kind of unfolding that question, the first thing that came to mind was honesty. I had to learn to be honest in my own personal recovery work. And I think that's a core piece of learning to be honest with ourselves and honest with others. When I was at this men's retreat last week, a couple of times we did something called the hot seat, where you could volunteer to go sit in a chair in front of 30 guys that know you well, right? And they get to ask you any question, and you just answer it. And usually they're pretty brief, pretty quick. And as our coach said, if you notice a little string of something that maybe needs to be tugged a little more, maybe the next person can kind of tug that a little bit. And I went up and did it, and I got done, and I felt loved, right? And at one time in my life, I couldn't have done that because I had so many secrets, so many hidden compartments, so many, not me not telling myself the truth. And I sat up there, on camera with lights on, and just, got asked all kinds of, guys that know me well enough knew where to poke. And it felt good to just be able to, without even thinking, to just spontaneously, here's my truth. And like I said, I felt really loved by it. So, but that's been a 25-year process of learning to be a what you see is what you get kind of guy. To be honest with myself and be honest with others. And I don't know, I hate to use this word, but I take pride in that I've worked at. People tell me a lot, Robert, I appreciate how authentic you are and how real and open and honest. I would not have been accused of being authentic and real and open and honest 30 years ago. Nobody would have ever said that, but that's been the work I've been in. So learning to be honest with self and others and be transparent. The second thing that came to mind was purpose. Now, I get that I've worked with a lot of men that, follow David Data's stuff, and he talks about you got to know your purpose. And then they say, oh, I'm suffering. I got to find my purpose. And I approach it differently than Data. He approaches it karmically. Like, why were you put on this planet? What are you supposed to be here for? I approach that purpose is not singular, but it's manifest in everything that we do. And so I encourage guys, do everything you do with purpose and passion. Brush your teeth consciously with purpose and passion. Pay your taxes with purpose and passion. Make love with purpose and passion. Drive your car. Be conscious, be present, bring your A game to everything that you do. Don't mail any of it in. And that's a challenge for most of us men, especially we've grown up with television, radio, internet, video games, porn, whatever. That we're used to just, hey, we can just veg out, for hours at a time, and the world doesn't come to an end. Our ancestors could not veg out for hours at a time without the world would come to an end. We would get eaten or starve to death, right? Yeah. And I believe we men have lost that. And I don't mean we need to be doing shit all the time. Mm-hmm. We can be purposefully goofing off. We can purposely watch Netflix, but do it consciously, not just stream, what else is on? And so I tell men, like I said, bring your A game to everything that you do. And just kind of a little side note to that, women notice that. Mm-hmm. They notice men who live masterfully, purposefully, passionately, and they notice the men that mail it in. They notice it by our fingernails. They notice it by our shoes. They notice it by just little tidbits that we give away. Our inconsistencies, our not following through, our anxiety states, our pleasing behavior. Women, the feminine is highly sensitive to that. And so I think if we're going to penetrate women and world, we got to get on purpose. We got to live with passion. And again, do everything with passion. And I think the big stuff takes care of itself. People will say to me, Robert, you're lucky. You have a job you're passionate about. You live in Mexico. You have a great life. Blah 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 blah. And I usually say no luck involved. It's actually a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But I've never once in my life gotten up and asked myself, what's my purpose? I don't. I never have. I've just always leaned into wherever the next challenge was, and I've tried to spend as much time in my sweet spots as possible. So in my work, the stuff I don't love doing, I typically pay somebody else to do it, and that lets me love the stuff that I do. And it took a while to get to that place as well. So yeah, the purpose and passion and honesty, I think, are two core things for men to work on.
For sure. I want to back you up on the honesty bit. I'm creating my own men's course right now, and one of the first notes that I made on the relationships front was having to do a whole bit on how important it is to be honest and be honest in relationship, and how many of the myths around relationship involve dishonesty. Like, oh, you need to withhold this from your partner. You need to withhold that. You need to play this game in order for her to like you. You need to play this in order to have polarity. Don't show her this. Don't show her that. And it's totally backwards. A healthy relationship that is the relationship that you want will only come about via you being able to be honest, state your needs, share when you're feeling something, share when you're not happy, share when you are happy. All of that comes from honesty, and withholding creates the opposite of that. You don't share when you're happy. You don't share when you're upset. You don't state your needs. You get yourself into trouble with lies.
and then the women feel it, and they start poking and prodding, and we think we're being attacked, and we put up our defenses. Yeah. When two quick stories, because I think this is so important. I did a radio interview, I don't know, 15 years ago, in a local station when I was up in the Seattle area, and it was a program for women, probably on public radio, and it was two women that hosted it. I went to the studio and did it with them, and on one of the commercial breaks, I made a reference that I tell men, I said to the women, if you mess with a woman's trust, you mess with her lust. I usually say to men, if you fuck with a woman's trust, you fuck with her lust. And the women said, you need to say that when we come back from break. And I said, I can say that on the radio. And they said, well, maybe not the fuck part, but the other part. Yeah. And so I did. I said that. And these were two women about my age. I think they're probably in their 50s at that time. And so that was just part of the interview. Okay, about a year later, I walked into a coffee shop in the area, and I saw a coach, a women's coach that I knew, and one of the women who interviewed me. And she said, Robert, do you remember who I am? I said, yeah, I did a radio interview with you. And she said, I've got to tell you, when you said that thing about when you mess with a woman's trust, you mess with her lust, she goes, I'm like, in my 50s, been married forever. And she said, I had never put that two and two together. And said, I left that interview, went home and told my husband that. And she said, I just wanted to tell you how right on and how spot on that statement was. And as a woman, I hadn't even ever put that piece together. So it is huge, it's huge. And the other just quick story is that when I was dating, and I tried to approach dating consciously. And so, after I dated a woman, if we'd gone on 3 or 4 dates and it looked like we maybe were going to keep seeing each other, I would sit the woman down and I said, if we keep seeing each other, here's what you can expect from me. And I would tell them 4 things. I will be conscious. I will pay attention to us, to you, to me, to where we're going, to what's happening. I said, I will be honest. Everything I tell you will be the complete whole truth. You'll never find out I left something out, didn't tell you the whole thing, told you something that wasn't true. I'll be transparent. You will know what I think, what I feel, what I want, what I don't want, what I'm happy about, what I expect from you. You'll never have to guess that. And I will set the tone and take the lead. I will show up with a plan. I won't burden you with saying, what do you want to do tonight? And I would tell the women that. And every woman, I probably told that to 4 or 5 different women over a few years. every one of them got this look on their face and said, basically, oh my goodness. And they would say, I've never had a man say anything like that to me before. And many of them would say, you need to write another book and you need to tell men what you are doing. And that core piece was just letting a woman know, here's the foundation I'm going to build as we move forward. And I'm going to take responsibility, and it's going to be built on honesty and consciousness and transparency. And women just light up with that, because that's not been their experience with the masculine since they were 2 and started having daddy issues. Every man has betrayed every one of those core tenets throughout their life. And, no, I don't perfectly embody and manifest them as well as I would like, but it is still, in my marriage, it is still my drive to be conscious, to be honest, to be transparent, and set the tone and lead. And my wife feels safe because I show up in that way. Yeah. So that's huge.
And did you write a second book?
I've written another one, and I'm working on a third. I've got a second book called Dating Essentials for Men. That's been out a year and a half, and I'm working on another one called Positive Emotional Tension, which is based on a class that I teach with the basic premise that women have to experience emotional tension to be attracted to a man, feel sexual arousal toward him, and stay attached, and men tend to hate emotional tension. So we got a problem. So that's what that book's about.
Beautiful. Yeah. John Gray is my favorite guy for showing you how sort of opposite, women and men tend to be in relationship, or even, 2 men who are embodying mostly masculine and mostly feminine sides. There's that's what sort of brings us together. So I really look forward to reading that book. I wanted to address the purpose piece that you mentioned as well. Men need authenticity, honesty, and they need purpose, and I did a personal growth workshop called Choices when I was 24 or 25, and we had a small group for 5 days moving through this program, and towards the end, once these people, we all got to know each other in the small group, and we did a process where you're standing in a circle with your group leader, and they're looking at you, and they're saying words that are basically your essence. They're sort of tapping into my essence, and trying to figure out what my purpose is. Like what they're trying to write is called a contract. Like, what's your human contract on this planet? And so what mostly they distilled with, me saying a few things, they were sort of pulling it out of me, was this: I am a real man showing enthusiasm to help others find more joy in life. And
love it.
So, real joy, enthusiasm, those were sort of the things that had a huge impact on me when I said them. They were like, you're lighting up when you say that, and they were like, that's your contract. That's the thing that you're here to do. And it may not even feel easy to you, but it feels purposeful for you. Yeah. And, looking back on that 10, 11 years later, I'm still like, yeah, I wouldn't change much about that. Like, it's, your purpose isn't necessarily like the guy who started Charity Water, right? Like, to get rid of famine in the world, get water to 7 billion people. It can be just a way of being and how you influence the people around you. And you can live that when you're tying your shoes and when you're brushing your teeth. It comes through in the energy of who you are, And so for people out there who are like, geez, like, how am I going to do purpose? You're talking about the disillusionment that comes when David Data shares that stuff around purpose. Is like, it's not as complicated as we like to make it up to be. Like, we have to, build an empire of some kind to be like in our purpose, or we have to write a book that is a bestseller and outdoes itself every year for 20 years. Like,
so maybe you just raise a child. Maybe you, and again, I think go back to that honesty and transparency. I believe if a man commits himself and gets accountability groups to hold him to it, because we'll lie to ourselves without even realizing we're lying to ourselves. I promise you, if you live with honesty and transparency, you'll probably also live with purposefully and with passion. Yeah. Because, if you get up every day and you tell yourself the truth about everything, you're going to be that sharp sword just cutting through the world. And it's It's like the dulled sword comes from us hiding everything and compartmentalizing and lying to ourselves and lying to others and hiding stuff. So, for example, if you're hiding porn or masturbation, if you're hiding that, you haven't paid your taxes, if you're hiding your financial problems, if you're hiding anything about you, it's going to dull your sword. And and you won't feel purposeful. You won't feel on point. You won't have an integrity about you. So, yeah, if I can say anything to men listening, if you don't already have a safe place, because I recommend that throughout No More Mr. Nice Guy, and I've been recommending it for over 20 years. Find a safe place and be you. Release your shame. Talk about the things you don't want to talk about. Get in the hot seat and let anybody ask you any question and you answer it without reservation or holding back. Create that in your life and you will live purposely.
Yeah, you will survive the hot seat and you will come out sharper, better. Okay, last question for you, Robert.
Last question. Hot seat question.
If we were to turn our attention to the younger generation, this next generation that's coming up, that I coach and mentor young guys from time to time, guys who are 15, 16, 17, 18, and man, they're dealing with different stuff than I was at their age. How do we implement some of the tools that you've taught in No More Mr. Nice Guy of how to be, you're teaching men how to be conscious men through No More Mr. Nice Guy. How would you say we could implement those tools that you're sharing in that book in, let's say, the school system, or in some kind of, it doesn't even necessarily need to be in school, but what would you create if you could create something for boys between the age of 12 and 18?
Yeah. That's a good question, and it's one I've pondered, and it's one I've talked with other men, because a lot of men in my world have this same concern of how to bring this back to younger men at an age, because if you pretty much, I think most psychological development theory and research, and Brad Blanton talks about this in Radical Honesty, and he does a pretty good job of bringing this, that in adolescence, in this 16 to 17 to 19, 20 year age span, we solidify the roles that we've been trying on kind of through younger adolescence, and we start solidifying them into our identity. We make them our identity, even if they're not. We try on enough stuff that we say, okay, this is how I'll get love. This is how I'll get laid. This is how I'll make a lot of money. And that gets solidified, and that becomes kind of rock hard. And part of that is our protection, our armament. Part of it is our weaponry, how we protect ourselves. And so if we can get to young boys at that age before that becomes so rock hard and solidified, I think there's a real advantage to that. And there's no right way. I think, for example, I've been asked, will we write a book for dads? I think if dads can help their sons through that period of time, it'll be helpful. I've thought about and kind of played with ideas of writing some sort of graphic novel that applies to either young teens or middle teens, that takes the nice guy story and weaves it into the common problems that adolescent boys deal with. Basically, how to fit in and how to be positively noticed by girls, right? How to weave it. So there's ways of doing that. Another piece is I'm in the process of creating my will and trust, and where like monies from my book royalties will go after I'm dead and gone, and where all the other stuff I've created, how that will get funneled and used, part of it going to family. But one of the things I've thought, I would love to create a trust that funnels money to Mankind Project so that adolescent boys could afford to go to a Mankind Project weekend. And, even as we were talking just now, as you were asking, I think it'd be great if Mankind Project did an adolescent weekend.
Yeah.
Where, boys from 12 to 18, 12 to 20, 15 to 20, whatever, had a weekend just for boys, in that age group. So they're not necessarily there being overwhelmed by men in their 40s and 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So, Mankind Project isn't perfect, but I think it's a good tool that I think adolescent boys could benefit. And man, if there's a way to get it into the school system, because when I was in graduate school in the 80s, in child development, we were being taught, boys and girls are born exactly the same. They're tabula rasas, blank slates, and society imprints gender roles and expectations on us. Well, there is truth that society imprints gender roles and expectations on boys and girls, and it's completely untrue that boys and girls are the same. Right. Every quantifiable research shows boys and girls develop differently. And what's happened is the entire school system has started treating boys and girls like the tabula rasa. Nowadays young kids are taught there are many genders as there are people on the planet. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it's kind of like all that's done is taken away. Well, who am I? How do I identify? And you watch young boys and girls, and man, they go through so many stages: coloring hair, piercing, tattoos, trying on being heterosexual, bisexual, this sexual, that sexual, and it's kind of like it's a swirling mess with no direction because they're being told, "Oh, we're just blank slates," blah 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 blah. We're not. We're not blank slates, and so most public education now has actually been geared and wired to how do girls learn the most effectively. And they tend to learn well sitting in a seat, being in small groups, discussing things. Boys don't learn well that way. Yeah. They need to be out in the woods and nature and being challenged and discovering things for themselves and figuring things out. And education doesn't provide that for boys. And there's a big reason why the dropout rate for boys is astronomical and why so few men are actually getting to college anymore. And women dominate college and graduate school.
Yep.
And I'm not saying let's take that away from women. I'm just saying we do need to take a look at why boys aren't getting there anymore.
Yep.
And I think it's because the educational system does not favor boys at all. Unless the boys just learn to sit still, be quiet, and pay attention and memorize shit. And that can happen, but it's not really how boys tend to learn best.
Yeah, I like what you said about that. And as you were fleshing it out, I was like, oh man, I think what I want most is to have like something like what I have with the men's group in schools everywhere. And
Sure.
And then I realized as you're talking about this sort of gender merging that's occurring is that it seems that maybe the opportunity for that has passed because you're going to get more and more opposition from people saying like, why are you doing a gendered group in school? Mm-hmm. Like we're teaching kids that gender doesn't matter. And so there is a problem there that I foresee, and hopefully that gets worked out, and hopefully I can contribute to changing that. But
I'll share a quick opinion. I think even though that is the stated standard that gender's purely fluid, and again there is fluidity to it. I'm not arguing against that, but I think it's like a lot of things. We've drunk the Kool-Aid, we state the party line, and I'm not sure all that many people actually really believe it. Mm-hmm. I think it's just you can't say anything otherwise than that because a few people who are diehards, no, you can't impose that on blah, blah, blah. Yeah. We're afraid of pissing them off.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I don't know that many women buy into that thing that, oh, we're all the same. You talk to any woman personally, she goes, oh, I'm not like my husband. I'm not like the men I've known. I'm very different.
Yeah.
And it's not just because society conditioned them or trained them to be different. Mm-hmm. So I'd say don't worry too much about that. If you've got a great idea and you can find an inroad into getting boys, whether it's in school or out of school, into boy groups led by men that they trust and can relate to, man, if you can find a way to do it, yeah. Charge forward and do it.
Oh, it'd be so valuable. I mean, my life was changed because I went to rehab, and
yeah.
I had these groups that I sat in with guys who were in their 20s. They were running the group. I had mentorship from men in a real situation that wasn't about school. It was about life, the school of life,
yeah.
and
yeah.
Man, did I ever need that and want that more than I thought. I thought I didn't want any help from anybody, and then I wanted to do everything on my own. But the truth is, I did want help. I wanted mentorship from the men who, I saw guys and I was like, I want what he has and I don't know how to get it. And I sure didn't have the courage to ask. But because I was in that environment, I was able to draw on their knowledge, and they were able to share that with me. Here's how I live in order to get to where, where I am. And they led me there. So yeah, my dream would be to see that, see No More Mr. a version of No More Mr. Nice Guy groups for boys in schools, where guys can come and be honest.
Man, I'm cheering for you. And the good news is men are finding this at a much younger age.
Yeah.
Like I said, that stuff did not exist when I was young. But, this workshop that I went to, I rented an Airbnb and, and opened it up for other guys in the program to come just stay in this house. I had the same house last year, and all the men there were like closer to my age, kind of more, a little bit elder status. Well, this year that didn't work out for some of those men aren't in the program. Some had other stuff. And so this year, at least 4 out of the 6 of us, there was me, one guy who's 50 something, and the other 4 guys were like 28 to 35. And it was invigorating to be with these younger guys. We they recorded the UFC title fight.
Yeah.
We watched that late one night eating popcorn.
Yeah.
And there's an energy in young men, and they're getting into this stuff, and they're much better educated about things than I ever was at a young age. They know about ayahuasca, they know about mind expanding drugs, they know about stoicism. They know shit at a much younger age because the internet just provides every bit of information. Yeah. And so I'm optimistic that there are places for young men to get this work, and I'm optimistic that people like you want to keep pushing that downward, younger and younger age of men finding this stuff. So when I see the state of men's work, I'm on a high. I'm optimistic about the direction things are going.
May we continue to evolve. Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
I see it.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you've done, for what you've shared with the world, and for continuing to just put your energy out there. Shalina she's a huge book nerd, has a lot of books. This is like half our books, and she interviews a lot of authors, and a lot of authors they're actually hard to get a hold of, and so I appreciate that you're accessible and that you're out here and you're still sharing what you're doing with guys, and that you're out there in the world doing the work. And so thank you for coming on my show. Number 50.
Thank you for the invitation. Number 50. Congratulations. Let's shoot for 500.
Yeah.
Keep it going.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Robert. How do people find you?
Easy enough, drglover.com, drglover.com. If you Google No More Mr. Nice Guy, if you Google Robert Glover, I come up about the top 10 spots. So I'm pretty easy to locate.
Amazing. Thank you, sir. I look forward to your 3rd book, and thanks again.
Ben, thank you.